Today I'm reviewing the Chevy Cobalt, and this isn't really the sort of car I'd typically review on my channel just because I like more import cars, but I got a request to do this and I'm really excited to show you guys all the ins and outs of this car. The owner's done a few modifications, so let's dive in and check it out. Modifications on this one include the BC coilovers, which give the car a very low stance and lower center of gravity as well. It has the 17-inch focal point black alloy wheels, and you can see the projector beam headlights there as well. It has a downpipe and also a Megan Racing exhaust for more sound. Inside the car, as you'll see later, it does have Sparco racing seats. The design of this car is very generic and plain, and that's really one of the main things that people remember about the Chevy Cobalt is just how plain the styling is. But for some people that's good. Not everyone wants a really flashy car, and this sort of flies under the radar. And being beige, this one attracts even less attention than something like a bright red or a bright blue. So that's really, I think, why the owner chose this car, is just kind of the stealthiness of it. It's a very plain car, and it's not a car that's really modified a whole lot. As you can see, the side profile of the vehicle is actually quite nice. It has a longer hood than some other compacts, and also the deck lid here is very short. So it gives the car a sportier look than a lot of the other compacts out there, which is nice. And around back, the Chevy Cobalt does have a rear spoiler, and this one has some tinted taillights, which aren't super dark, so it just kind of sets off the back end really nicely. That same design language carries through to the interior of the Cobalt, and it really is the pinnacle of generic car design. There's just nothing special about this interior, and it's just very plain and very beige. In fact, I've seen hearing aids this exact same color. Another gripe I have with the interior is that it's very plasticky. The dashboard, the door panels, the glove box lid, and even the armrest are all hard plastic, and it just doesn't give the interior a very nice feel. Usually car makers will do some sort of soft touch material, like on the door panel or on the dashboard, even in an inexpensive car, just to make it feel nicer, but they have not done that at all in this interior, and I think that's part of the reason I don't really like it. Also, I want to mention the sun visors are so thin. In fact, I've got printer paper that's thicker than these sun visors. It's really strange. However, there are a few good points to this interior. The steering wheel is small in diameter, and the rim is fairly thick, so it gives you a nice feeling of control when you're behind the wheel. Also, the shifter is just in a great position. A lot of cars have the shifter either too far forward or too far back or even too far down, and this one is just really nicely placed. And the same can be said for the radio and the climate control. Everything is just within easy reach, and it's easy to find all of the controls. This is the base model Cobalt, so you're not going to get a lot of equipment. In fact, it has manual mirrors and manual windows, but oddly enough, it has automatic headlights. So if that's a feature you're really passionate about, you'll definitely like the Cobalt. Okay, here we are behind the wheel of the Chevy Cobalt, and as I'm sure you can see in the camera, there's quite a bit of vibration, and that brings me on to my first point. With the coilovers that the owner has installed on this car, there is quite a bit of vibration that you feel in the interior, and going over bigger bumps in the road, the car kind of bounces around a lot. And the exhaust on this car creates quite a lot of noise in the interior as well, and when you really open it up, there's quite a bit of drone. In fact, at higher RPM, it actually rattles the plastics on the dashboard and door panels. Once you let off the throttle, though, there's actually not a lot of road noise and wind noise, so it's pretty quiet otherwise. This car is incredibly easy to drive. The steering is fairly responsive, and it's not overly assisted. It has some weight to it. Also, the throttle and brake pedals are fairly responsive as well, and the car is just a nice, easy, manageable size. With the coilovers that this owner has installed, the car corners much better than it would if it was stock. There's much less body roll, and it just goes around the corner really well. Coming out of the corner, though, there's really not a whole lot of power, and that's because this engine has about 150 horsepower, and it's just not a whole lot really to move this car around. I thought about doing a 0 to 60 clip in this video, but I think you would probably just get bored before it actually reached 60 miles an hour. In fact, I timed it before I started filming, and I came up with about 10.5 seconds, which is a long time. Thankfully, the owner of this car is planning to put on a turbo and increase the horsepower to hopefully about 250. So that'll give it a much needed upgrade in power. These Sparco racing seats hold you in extremely well around corners. The side bolstering is great, and it just barely fits my body type. So obviously if you're going to get a seat like this, you want to try it out beforehand. But for me personally, they fit just right. I wish the backrest was slightly softer, but apart from that, they're just great. They're comfortable and they hold you in really well around corners. Like I said earlier, this car is fairly slow, but it has a decent amount of its power available down low in the RPM range. So that's good for just normal driving. You really don't have to wind it up a whole lot like you do some cars. And there you can hear just how loud the exhaust is in this car. In conclusion, I'm glad I had the opportunity to review this car for you. It's not something you see a lot of. Most of the Cobalts out on the road are stock, and if you go to car meets and car shows and whatnot, you just don't see a lot of Cobalts there, especially the non-SS model. So it's nice to see what can be done with this car, and like I said, the owner is going to put a turbo on it, so that should really increase the performance quite a bit. But I just have to wonder, if you're buying a car for performance, why would you start with a Cobalt? And that's kind of the question that's been in the back of my mind throughout this whole review. And sometimes a car is given to you and you don't really have much of a choice, but if you're going to go out and buy a car to modify, I just don't think the Cobalt is really the right choice. So thanks for watching this video, and if you have any questions about this car, just post a comment below. And remember, kids, don't drive like an asshole.